Now, while MicroStation provides many cells in its standard default cell libraries, you'll not always find the cells that meet your specific requirements. In this case, you need to create cells of your own. This is a very simple process and only involves drawing the elements that you want to contain in the cell, selecting the elements, defining an origin for the cell, attaching a cell library to the design, and then creating your custom cell. Now, this next exercise will take you through that process, and I'd like you to work along with me. First, I'm going to draw the elements, and in this case, I'm going to draw a set of break lines, which are used extensively in drawings to break elements or contract elements. So the first thing is to draw the elements themselves, and I'm going to draw this as a unit cell, which means that my cell will conform to the master units of my design. So I need a line which will be 1 master unit long. There's 1, which in this case will be 1 foot long, since I'm working in English units. If you're working in metric, simply use whatever master unit you're working with. And now I need the actual break lines themselves. So I'm going to do this using a multi-snap, which I often have on as a standard snap mode. And just to refresh your memory, multi-snaps, you can identify as many snap modes as you wish to use in the multi-snap mode. In my case, it's key point, intersection, and nearest. So whichever of those points come up first, they'll be selected. So now nearest is the obvious choice here. So that's automatic. So let's draw a break line. Not looking for perfection here, since break lines have no size or scale. There's the lines. Need to do some editing. Going to use the standard deletion trick of selecting all the elements, then using the trim tool to remove the 2 lines that I don't want. Right click and we're done. This is a double break line, so I'm going to copy this. There we go. There's my double break line. So the elements are in place, and now I need to select them for the cell creation. And I can do this either with the element selection tool, or I can use a fence. Either way will do. I'm leaving the fence on for the moment. Next thing is to apply the origin of the cell, and that's the origin tool on the cells toolbox. And this is the point where the cell hangs from the cursor when you're placing it. So a little thought is required as to where to place the origin. I'm going to place it about there, on the assumption that I can snap this break line set to the end point of an element which is being broken. That might work, might not. But in any case, I can move the cell around as I need to. So I'm going to plop that right there. So there's my origin in place, there's my elements, and the selection has taken place. Now, as a matter of interest, you can place the origin either before or after you select the elements. Either way will do. Now we need to create a custom cell library, and I'm going to make a custom one simply because I don't like having custom cells residing inside MicroStation. Certainly not inside MicroStation's cell libraries. And the reason being that when you update MicroStation, it's quite likely that you'll lose your custom cells when they're overwritten by MicroStation's cell files. So rather than take that chance, I will create a new cell library, which we'll do right now. So off we go to Element and Cells. I'm currently in that sample2 cell, but I need to create a new one in my own folder. So File, New, to create a new cell library. MicroStation offers me the default path to its cell files. Don't want that. I want to go to my M folder, which I'm using specifically for MicroStation. And level 2, that will do. So I'll select level 2 as the local folder. And it needs a name. I'm going to call this Peter's cell. Why not? It's my cell. And we'll save that. So what I've done is save a new cell library in my local folder, and automatically I'm in that cell library. Now, having gone through the motions of drawing the elements, selecting and placing the origin, then the Create button in this box is now active. And this is what I use to create this cell. So click on Create. We need names for this. So we're going to call this break. And we'll tab down and give it a description. We'll call it a double break line. And we'll click on Create. And there's my new cell in my own library, and there's a display of it. Now at this point you can start placing the cell. And in fact, why don't you start placing some of these cells at different scales, different rotations, as you would normally do. Now one thing I went over fairly quickly was the cell creation process. I'm going to click on Create again. Just want to show you something here. The default type of cell is called a graphic cell, but you could also use a point or a menu cell. Menu cells you would not normally use, since that relates to digitizer tablet menus, which we're not discussing in this course. The default graphic cell can be placed with the symbology with which it was created. It can be placed on the same levels as the levels of the elements in the cell, or in relation to the active level. Elements in the cell can be snapped to without restriction, and a graphic cell rotates when the view is rotated. On the other hand, the point cell assumes the active symbology when it's placed. It's always placed on the active level regardless of the level of the cell's contents, and it can only be snapped to at the origin point, and its rotation is view independent, meaning that if you rotate the view, the cell remains in the same orientation that you placed it. So in general, you'd use graphic cells for most typical cell insertions, mostly because of their greater flexibility. Keep in mind that a point cell is more restrictive and is often used for text that must not rotate with the view, as an example. Now at this point you might want to create some cells of your own. Follow the same process, draw the elements, select them, apply the origin, and go through the creation process. Remember that cells can be any size. This is a small one obviously, but a cell could be an entire drawing. Another example would be a title block. In fact, the title block that we used in the previous videos could be used as a cell.